This book is why this whole YouTube video is happening. I'm not sure that doing an unboxing video is the best way to introduce my booktube channel. However, I think it might give some interesting insights into who I am as a reader, kind of my past with books, and kind of what the future of my content and this platform is going to be. So hopefully this little foray into all of the things that publishers have sent me and all the books that I have been buying recently will give you some idea of what you can expect from me. I got a ton of packages to open, but first we're going to start with the books that I have bought recently. I think this will give an insight into like my book shopping forays, and also once I start opening these packages, the cats are going to go absolutely feral. Having spent the last few years on Book Talk and Bookstagram, I have been inundated with conversations about overconsumption of books, and I just want to say that the money that supplied these books onto my shelves was made through hosting an author event here in Indianapolis. I got paid specifically, I think, too much money to host it, and I felt like the only way to like kind of give back to my community and feel like less bad about the fee that people paid me in order to come to this event and promote it was just to buy books that I could also just help promote reading and literacy and taking some pictures at the local bookshops. So this is what I got with that selection. Let's start off with On Agoraphobia by Graham Cavney. This is kind of a personal and philosophical exploration into the ideas of agoraphobia, of just like staying away from society. And I went through years and years of agoraphobia. So this is definitely one that I have seen cited in so many different books that I have loved over the years about mental health and disability. And this is a book that I am almost 100% confident is going to be used as a resource for my own book. Specifically just because, yeah, I felt like I have a whole phase of my life that is like the agoraphobic years, and I could not be more excited to dive into this one. This one I did have to special order because I think it was published in 2018, and you can't find it at basically any bookstores anymore. So I did special order this with a bookstore that I frequently put the most weird requests in for them, and they're always super nice about it, and I can't wait to dive into this. Hey, so this is the next day. About 2 hours after filming the unboxing video, I was texted by my realtor that my old house, they had been collecting a whole stack of books. So I have more packages to unbox. So if you want to see that secondary unboxing video, I've done a Q&A with my Instagram audience, and you can find the video where I answer some questions from the audience and talk about whatever is in this stack. I really have absolutely no idea. You can do that by subscribing to me on Patreon or Instagram. Any tier will get you the access to the premium videos that I've been doing. So if you want to help support me, that's a great way to do it. Like, we can find out together what is in these boxes. The next one we have is The Light Pirate. This is a speculative fiction book about climate change, kind of processing what it's done, I think specifically to Florida, and how the climate has disrupted the community, not only just like the geography of the landscape surrounding the area, but also just like the psychology of these characters. This was something that I was recommended as I have been writing more and more about climate change on my Substack. So I've been diving into this topic for more than a year and started just recently releasing my writings and feelings and thoughts on the subject and kind of pulling culture into the conversations of climate change. And this book was recommended very highly by someone I really trust, who said this would be like a great resource for my future development and how I think about and write about climate change. Next up, we have Unshrinking, How to Face Fat Phobia by Kate Main, I think it is. This book has been all over my Instagram feed recently. I know a lot of people have just recently been picking up. Also blurbed by some of my most trusted authors. We have Carmen Marie Machado on here, Kimberly Crenshaw, Roxane Gay, just a great collection of writers and thinkers. And this is a book that several of the friends I've talked to this year have rated it as one of the best nonfiction books of their entire year. And I think that's just a phenomenally good conversation starter to get this book in my repertoire. I've read different books on this topic before, certainly, but I think always just a reintroduction and getting a new lens and a new approach to the topic is something that I really look forward to. So I'm definitely going to try to read this one before the end of the year, because I am making a book list of books that my favorite content creators have called their favorite nonfiction books. There's 15 of them, and I'm trying to read all of them before the end of the year. So this will be book 3 or 4 on that list, and I'm really excited to dive into it, especially just because I have not heard a single bad word about it. Recently, I've been seeing a lot of Twitter discourse surrounding this book. This is the language of climate politics, fossil fuel propaganda, and how to fight it. And if you know anything about me, this speaks to my soul. Specifically, the way that we frame the topic of climate change is something that really fascinates me. And so I am extremely excited to get into how the political discourse of conversations pertaining to climate can be beneficial, can be harmful. And I've heard a lot of scientists give really high praise for this. And I've heard a lot of like right-wing, conservative, libertarian journalists say that it's one of the most harmful books. So inevitably, it has to be a book that will fascinate me and compel me and give me so much to think about and write about. This is one I did not expect to pick up, but when I went into a bookstore, the owner of the bookstore was telling me that they're having this author in for a talk coming up soon, and that it is really going to be a conversation about translation, about language, about world events through a personal and interpretive lens. And so this is Ukraine War Love, a Donetsk diary. It's a translated work from Russian into English, and so the author and the translator are going to be coming to the bookstore to give a talk. I think this is going to be a really fascinating read. Everyone at the bookstore that has read it already has really loved it and really given it the highest praises, and so I'm really looking forward to reading this, don't get me wrong, but I am more excited to use this book as the context for this author and translator conversation. I've never seen an author event like that where the translator is there and present, and so I think this will just be like a phenomenally new and fun experience for me as a reader. Next up, we have The Country of the Blind, a memoir at the end of sight by Andrew Leland. This has been one of the books that has been kind of floating around the broader like disability memoir like best of reading list that I have found. So I knew I needed to pick it up because I've heard just incredible things about it. It was a Pulitzer Prize finalist, so I'm sure the writing is phenomenal, but I am just looking forward to consuming ever more stories that take an interesting perspective or an interesting narrative how they present disability. And blindness is one of those things that, much like mental health, I feel like these are subsections or almost parallel groups to the larger disability movements. And I think the narratives that I've read from blind authors and blind content creators has always given the kind of disability conversations that are happening inside my head so much more of a dynamic usefulness to carry the conversations into the broader society. So I expect that will be exactly what I will find with this book. I don't know really anything about Andrew Leland or even like the specifics of what this book is going to get into. I just know it's been highly recommended. Next up, we have Patient HM, a story of memory, madness, and family secrets by Luke Dietrich. I have had this book on my list for a long time and just never owned a copy. And I do know broadly the history of this. This is kind of a famous case within psychology and schizophrenia and like the history of madness. And I have read so many books that reference this particular case. However, this is basically a 300, 400 pages devoted towards that specific story. And as much as all the other books have probably done a good job at like referencing and dissecting this story, I think having like the full breadth context of like how to process this within the grander narrative of disability studies, within mental health studies, within MAD studies, I think it'll just give it just a little bit more of like context and how to view and think about these things. So I'm excited for this one. Okay, I am kind of worried about this one. When I was at the bookstore making all of my orders and picking up all of these books, I asked them what their best-selling nonfiction book of the year was. And what they told me was a book that I had already read. But the second book that they told me was this, which I have never heard about before, and it's Falling Back in Love with Being Human. This is kind of prose, a little bit of poetry. It's a collection of things that are like kind of soul searching in some sense. I know this is something that has resonated with quite a few people because I have gone on social media and looked at people talking about this, and I don't know exactly what I'm going to get into. Some people have described it as a new or better version of Rupi Kaur poetry. It is blurbed by Glennon Doyle, who is the author of Untamed, a book I almost famously dislike. So I don't know what I'm getting into this. I don't know if this will be saccharine. I don't know if this is going to feel like real and totally realized in the emotional state that I find myself in when I'm reading, but I'm going to try to go in with an open mind. I don't feel like I'm super optimistic about this one, but if so many people love it, maybe it's worth me diving in to just see how I feel about it. And finally, for my first fiction book of the pile, and that's what you can kind of expect from me. About 90% of the things I talk about on this channel, or 95, maybe 100%. I don't know about the future of where we're going here, but everything I really consume and talk about online is nonfiction, and I do like diving into fiction. However, I tend to find it to be a little bit more of like a personal thing for me, that becoming a content creator has felt so much like a job that I want to have some reading for fun. But I will give you an insight into why I would pick up a title like this. Everyone in this Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austin. I grabbed this simply because I am a mutual of Emily's on TikTok and I love her content. She has such a fun approach to being a content creator and talking about writing that it is kind of infectious to me. And so I have wanted to pick up one of her books to see how kind of knowing the author through social media or through the lens of watching their content and being someone that like I could talk to, like wondering how they approach writing and how they approach storytelling. So I'm really excited for this. I've known a lot of people that have read this over the years and they've really enjoyed Emily's writing. So I'm really looking forward to it. And this is also a fiction book that is like 200 pages, which is the perfect length for me. Next up, we have Funny Weather, Art in an Emergency by Olivia Laing. I recently read Olivia Laing's book, The Lonely City, which was really an investigation into the art scenes of New York City during the 20th century and how it related to these famous artists conceiving of showing art that represents loneliness. And I really liked it. The writing Olivia brings to the page is just absolutely incredible and inspiring. However, I didn't really love like the high focus on like famous artists. I thought this was not a representation of loneliness that I necessarily cared to investigate, but ultimately the reading experience was so phenomenal that I wanted to pick up one of her other books. And I've been told recently that she has a new book on like the garden or something. I've been told by quite a few people to just stay away from that book, that it's no good. And you know, that happens occasionally even to the most talented writers. And so instead of getting that, I picked up a book on art and emergencies. I think this is going to have to do a lot about the crushing weight of living in modern society and using all of this technology and the future of climate change and how we conceive of art. So these are the types of things that I really do think about all the time. So this is kind of a perfect book for me to add into my reading list. So I'm really excited to dive into this. It's also a gorgeous cover. I like the tone of the pink with the pale gray, and yeah, I think this is a book that I'm just happy to have on my shelves finally. Next up, we have Sharks Don't Sink: Adventures of a Rogue Shark Scientist. I picked this one up specifically because I've been told by a lot of people that it is one of the most creative blended or braided memoirs to come out this year. I love the blend of science writing and memoir writing, and as I am kind of getting ready to begin or approach my own braided and blended memoir of my life with schizophrenia, but also like the grander politics of schizophrenia and disabilities, I'm really excited to dive into more stories that will give me kind of the roadmap for how these structures of stories, how these intertwining narratives can cohesively form a story. And realizing this is one of the best reviewed books of that little genre that I have fallen in love with, I'm really excited to dive into this. And I love sharks. You know, who doesn't love sharks? I get so excited for Shark Week. So getting a little bit of an education into shark science sounds absolutely phenomenal to me, and it's great research for my own book. When I went to the bookstore to pick up this last book, they weren't sure why the book was in the shop. They didn't remember me placing the order from it, and they didn't have any like name to like associate the order. And so they were like, sure, like I walked in and they were like, surely this has to be something you ordered. And they were correct. This is a philosophy book called Against Purity: Living Ethically in Compromised Times. This is kind of a philosophical exploration and how we view the degradation of society through pollution, through erosion, through climate change. This is a book that has also been quoted in so many other books that I've read over the last few years, and I could not be more excited for it. I also think it's just like a weirdly gorgeous, kind of unsettling cover, and this is a book that I might have to read with my book club at some point, because I think this is giving a lot of great philosophical framework for how we talk about a society that is absolutely fraying at the seams. You know, who doesn't need a fun, depressing philosophy book to add into your reading list? Jamie Green is the author of The Possibility of Life, Science, Imagination, and Our Quest for Kinship in the Cosmos. This is a book that I read last year. I had Jamie on my podcast. We talked about this book and our love for science. And Jamie has been an incredibly encouraging person as I've been working on my book proposal. But more specifically, I've been writing about climate change. And I don't have an educational background in science. I absolutely love science. I've read hundreds of books on the topic, but writing science or writing from a scientific lens is not something that I have done a ton of. And that's something that as I'm applying to grad school is kind of my mission. Like I want to work on my book and I want to get that like memoir done. But when I'm going to my MFA program, if I get in, my goal is to like kind of transition myself out of strictly a memoir autobiographical writer and into someone that focuses more on like systemic natures of climate change and science. And so Jamie, who is in the industry, has written a book on the subject, has been like a really grateful resource. So she recently had a little like promotion thing going where she was selling signed copies of her book in order for people to donate to GoFundMes for people trying to evacuate Gaza. And that was something that totally aligned with how I like to spend my money. And so even though I already have a copy of this, I'm so glad to have a signed copy of this now. And I'm so happy to donate what little money I have to like something that I think is incredibly important. So I don't know what's written on the page, and I'm gonna wait and find out later. But thank you, Jamie, so much for sending that to me. I don't know why packaging isn't just uniform. Like I've got 10 packages here, and they're all completely different from each other. And some of them are just a little bit of a struggle. Okay, I've got. What do I have? Wow. I don't think I knew about that. I have no memory of asking for this book. So thanks to the publisher, but we have Category 5, Superstorms and the Warming Oceans That Feed Them by Porter Fox. Maybe they just saw what I've been writing and talking about recently, and they're like, we just got to send this to him. So who is this from? This is from Little Brown. Didn't ask for it, but is not a more timely read. So I hadn't planned on picking it up like starting Monday, but just in time for probably the next announcement of a hurricane approaching, I might have to read this one immediately. We got 2 books, I think. This is big. This is big. We've got No Country for 8 Spotted Butterflies, a lyric essay. Ooh, I love that. And Arundhati Roy, who wrote the introduction, is one of my favorite writers. So this is something I am extremely excited for. This is from Astor House. I don't specifically remember this one, but it might have just been in one of their influencer campaigns. Like they're just like, click here and we'll send you this book. So yeah, this is really exciting. This is also really short. It's looking to be about 120 pages. And yeah, I love picking up some short reads, and a lyric essay is always great to dive into a subject and just get a beautiful new approach to something that I think is fascinating. Their second book is called My Men. This is a fiction book. It's a novel. I know nothing about this. Norwegian immigrants, something about the American upper Midwest. I don't know what I'm getting into. About Belle Gunness, I mean, maybe. I don't know if I'm gonna read this one. Might be a good gift to give someone. It seems like a little bit of a fall spooky type true crime adjacent read. So this happens a lot more frequently than I really care about. But yeah, very occasionally publishers will just, if they're going to send me one book, they'll just send me 2. And I don't really sometimes know what to do with these things. But when you're part of these like influencer databases, sometimes you just get random stuff in the mail. And, you know, I don't really know what to do with this. So on to the next one. This has got a tiny, this is like a cute little package. This is exciting. And I don't need to be scared about tearing this. However, I will have to clean it up quickly because my cat fucking loves bubble wrap and plastic in general. So, oh shit. Oh my God. My partner's favorite book of all time is Little Weirds by Jenny Slate. And they're going to be ecstatic when they get home and they see that I have Jenny Slate's newest book, Lifeform. Jenny Slate is a actress, comedian, writer, and also just one of the most unique voices in autobiographical literary memoir writing. I don't even know how to really describe what she does. It is a fascinating and creative look at like how to tell strange and obscure and wild stories. And I feel very strong that Jenny Slate's newest book is going to do exactly what Little Weirds did. And it's also just a gorgeous cover. As much as I am excited to go read this, my partner is going to be about 1,000 times more excited. So as soon as I'm done filming this, I'm going to hit stop record and then I'm going to take a picture and send it to them. All right, we got a cat on the packaging already, so hopefully there will be no major rustling around noises, which I feel is a weird thing to say as I'm just tearing packages and speaking into my phone. We have Code Dependent, Living in the Shadow of AI. Weirdly enough, this is a book that I requested like 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, and it's just now arriving. I already read this because I was working on a project and so I needed an audiobook and I found this at my library. So I've already read this and I didn't know they were going to send it. Even though I requested it, I never heard back from them. So I'm glad to have a copy of it because it's something that I can reference back to. But this is one of my favorite things that I've read on AI. It's not what I would say is like an essential read. However, if you're someone that really wants a book on AI and if you're looking to get into the subject, I think this has a really interesting lens on how it talks about AI, specifically the human cost of AI, not only with how humans relate to the labor that creates AI, but also the human labor that is being removed because of AI. This is very much centered on stories of workers, and specifically stories of workers outside the bounds of the United States and how AI is disrupting different countries and different workforces. I really did love this one. I thought it was really fascinating. More than anything, I think this book just gives me like a very particular lens in which to like dissect news stories surrounding AI, which we are inundated with constantly. It's inescapable part of our reality that we have to hear about AI from anyone and everyone. And so this book, I think, is a great resource for thinking about it. And it's not too long, and it's also told in a really like approachable style. And since I already read the audiobook, I can personally recommend the audiobook if that's the type of reader you are. The audiobook is phenomenally well done with a great narrator, and it moves really quickly. The chapters aren't overly long, which I always think make audiobooks just a little bit more digestible. So yeah, this is the book that in my group chats with people asking me for personal recommendations on things like technology, this is the first one I go to. So I think this would be a great one for you to pick up. I didn't think I'd be doing book reviews in this video, so you know, 2 for 1. I didn't know I was getting this one. However, I am super excited because I have seen pictures of this book around social media and I am in love with the cover. This is cult following, the extreme sex that capture our imagination and take over our lives. It's a hardcover book, but kind of more of those like a little bit textured pages to it. I think it's just absolutely gorgeous cover. Of course, I'm gonna have to like review it and see what I really think of, you know, the presentation and the writing and how it tells a story. But you know, if you're just gonna judge a book by its cover, fucking A+ right here. On the back of it, it says they're talking about Nexium, Heaven's Gate, Branch Davidians, and 2 other cults that I don't know anything about. So I'm so excited to dive into this one. Okay, I don't think this one is a book, but this has happened to me before. Oh, this is a book, actually. I didn't know because I don't get a lot of press boxes, because press boxes and nonfiction, it only happens like 2 or 3 times a year. So we've got The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Everyone has talked about this one. So many people are reading this book right now. I'm really excited to dive into it because I've seen a lot of the conversations that society, specifically the media, has been having around this book have just been verifiably insane. And so I'm really looking forward to getting even the further context in how absolutely deranged and delusional these talk show hosts are when they're talking about this book. So yeah, really excited for this one. I've heard great things and I can't wait to dive in. All right, we've got 2 packages left. I'm saving the purple one because I think I know what it is and it's like one of my most anticipated books of the year. So let's go with this big box. I have no idea what's in here because it is kind of heavy. So I'm thinking there's multiple things, but there's no way of knowing. Probably the happiest that I've ever been as a content creator was about 2 years ago when I realized that I could email university presses and ask them for copies of their new books. Like, the fact that I have access to free university press books is still absolutely mind-blowing. And so anytime one of them sends me some books, it's so exciting. A lot of the times university press books are more expensive than the trade books that you would find in bookstores. So not only is it the fact that I have access to these books, but also that I get to talk about super unique, super niche topics that mostly only academics are writing and thinking about is one of the most delightful parts of what I do. I like talking about, you know, some popular books here and there, but really what I love more than anything is finding indie press and university press titles that only like 44 people on Goodreads have reviewed, and then I can talk about them and hopefully shine a little light to something that literally essentially gets zero marketing dollars, and I like just being like a little helpful bit of how a book finds its way in the world. So we have 2 books from Princeton University Press. We have The Question of Unworthy Life, Eugenics and Germany's 20th Century. This is a book on kind of the start of the Holocaust through eugenic methods of the removal of disabled people from society. I've read about this topic so many times in different books, but never had a book specifically written solely about this topic, and I can't wait to dive into this. This is also going to be a little bit of a topic in my book, something that I really want to approach from a historical lens and talking about how it fits in with the wider history of psychiatry and the wider history of madness. And so I can't wait to get into this one. And now we have another book of AI Snake Oil, what artificial intelligence can do, what it can't, and how to tell the difference. I think this is going to be a really great book to kind of set the parameters for how we conceive of AI, because a lot of the stories about AI that have been in the media have just been basically corporate propaganda to make you think that AI is way more powerful and way more capable than it is. Like, there was this whole thing with Amazon had these shopping centers that it was like AI follows you around the store and whatever. It was actually just people in India on cameras watching you shop and then adding things into the cart. And I think this is going to give like a great kind of breakdown of exactly when the stories about AI are kind of based in reality and when the stories of AI are total bullshit in order to prop up the stock prices of some of these most overinflated companies that are keeping the American economy alive, but are also part of a giant bubble that is going to probably drive us into the next Great Depression. So, man, I think thinking about this book is going to make me feel absolutely insane, because that is how I think of AI in general. I think it's just this madness that we have forced upon society. And yeah, if you can't tell, I'm really passionate about this, and I feel like anytime that I really think about it for too long, my brain just starts melting. And that's also one of the fun things about reading nonfiction is like, I can induce myself into that like fugue state of excitement and elation and fury and frustration anytime with the wide array of books that I have on my shelves, and this is definitely another one in that collection. We saved the purple package for last. Not only is it because my favorite color is purple, but also I think this is going to be the book that I am going to genuinely pick up as soon as I'm done reading my book for my book club. So within the next, I would say, day and a half, you will see me reading this book on social media and talking about it, because I have now been tagged in different people posting about this book like 45 times. And I'm excited to now join in with that trend. So we have How to Tell When We Will Die on Pain, Disability, and Doom. I posted about this on my story on Instagram when I found out this book was happening and I saw the cover reveal. I was like so excited because it is genuinely gorgeous and it's something that speaks directly to my soul. Not only with like artistic design, but topically, this is exactly the type of thing that I want to read. And I posted it to Instagram, and I had 10 people direct message me within like 30 minutes of me posting it, and just like, I didn't even say anything. I just was like, oh, here's a book that's coming out. And they were like, I ordered it. And I was like, I this wasn't a review. I wasn't recommending. And they're like, I don't care. Like, I don't, people sometimes don't need me. They don't look to me to review a book specifically. They're not so much interested in like, is this a book that I love that you also love? No, they're just interested in using me as a resource. And this book is kind of why this whole YouTube video is happening in the way that it's happening. I don't always want to feel like I need to review a book for it to hit with my audience, because sometimes being in a space like nonfiction, book talk, and bookstagram, and booktube, it's a space that is not largely populated, that a lot of the titles that I interact with that come to me are not always titles that people will have ever heard about. And I think that's what makes doing what I do uniquely different. And so when we talk about overconsumption, or we talk about promoting books or talking about books that you haven't read about, it always feels like to fall flat on how we talk about the economy of books. And ultimately, that's a subject that I really care about and will dive into probably in some type of creative essay at some point. But when a book comes to me and I realize that there's a great chance that some of these titles will never have a single dollar of publicity budget given to them, and given to these authors that worked extremely hard to create and manifest their own work into the words that we are now getting to spend our time with, I kind of feel differently about how my platform can be used, especially because I have a reach. Like, I know that people have picked up this book before I ever really even talked about it. They picked it up simply because they had a place that they could go on the internet for people to show them. Ultimately, I think my time on BookTube is going to be slightly unconventional. I think talking about nonfiction books just presents itself in a different way in different capacities, where yes, I will absolutely be spending my future on this platform reviewing books and talking about things that I think you should read, that I have loved, and giving you my thoughts on why that is and what these things mean to me. But I also want to talk about the landscape of nonfiction books. I want to use nonfiction books as a resource to write creative essays and maybe do some long form YouTube essays talking about topics that I think are really interesting or fascinating, or something that might present itself in a new and unique way. And so, as much as I want to be a reviewer and a critic, I also think I want to be a resource for people. I want to be a source of slight entertainment, if you will, and hopefully talking about books that I have read, that I have not read, talking about the landscape of books will just be like a fascinating place for us to just, I don't know, enjoy our time together. So thank you so much for watching this unboxing video. If you can, subscribe to see more of this type of content. I'm going to be making weekly videos, and I am so excited to have a new platform where I don't feel restricted to make really fun, quirky little videos within a minute in order to get views. So I don't know what my future is going to look like specifically here, but I just like yapping about books, and I'm so glad that you're participating in that.